Good afternoon, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Josh.
And this is the Rebel Files, your one-stop shop for everything Star Wars. News, notes, wild speculation, breakdowns of trailers that we'll get on every Monday for the rest of the year.
Seemingly.
I made the joke with Janice last night when we did the Mandalorian trailer reaction. It just seems like we're going to get something every Monday. Until at least Rise of Skywalker, because we're getting into November, so it's full on. Here we go. So
yeah, and to think we were griping about not having enough news to talk about.
Right. So see how it goes. We're gonna do two stories tonight. We're gonna talk about the Benioff and Weiss stuff, and then we're gonna do a discussion about the Mandalorian trailer. But before we get into that, did you have any Star Wars adventures this last week?
Well, you know the adventure. I don't know if I'd relate it to Star Wars, but it is semi-Star Wars affiliated in a long way down fashion. Sort of that. So anybody knows me, my other hobbies, I ride motorcycles. So my Triumph that I own is nicknamed Rogue One. It's always been Rogue One. It has been because an old truck we called, so everything's got a Star Wars reference. So Long story short, me and my wife bought motorcycle number 2 this weekend, which just happened to be a BMW Adventure series. So the Ewan McGregor jokes have been flying around for the last couple of days. So we're debating.
It's the wrong color, but you'll be okay.
Actually, well, from theirs, yeah, they had those giant 1200s, but we've been kicking around, naming it Mara.
Yeah.
For a while, so we don't know how that's going to end up.
Somebody on one of the Star Wars pages that I follow is having a daughter, and they're like, we need a cool Star Wars name that's not Mara or Leia. I'm like, you have to go with Mara. Like that's like the name you have to go with. Like, who else are you gonna pick if you're not gonna pick Leia?
And it's considered a good German name. So
yeah, and it's random enough that she won't get harassed for it, but those who know will know and appreciate it. I'm just saying.
Yep. Exactly.
My Star Wars adventures, there hasn't been much because we're now, even though there's a bunch of Star Wars stuff coming, Janice and I have been doing the mad rush of all the movies that are coming out for the end of the year. And so I think we've done 3 movies each of the last 2 weeks. And then this week we're doing Terminator Dark Fate on Friday. And then we're doing, what was it? It wasn't Jojo Rabbit. There's something that's coming out on this weekend too that we're waiting until Sunday to go see. So on the main page, you'll be seeing lots of reviews, and also we've got Disney Plus coming on the 21st or on the 12th, and then we've got we're waiting for Castle Rock to wrap up. We're waiting for Jack Ryan comes out on the 1st. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's going on all at the same time. Sleep, who needs sleep?
Entertainment to watch. Yeah, we watched the Netflix original last night. It was the Laundromat. It was about the Panama Papers, and that one was good. That one was really good.
We did Dolomite Is My Name with Eddie Murphy. We did that one on Sunday. It was really good. So we're giving you other suggestions to fill your non-Star Wars time. So let's get into the 2 big stories that dropped yesterday. We did get some information from MCM London Comic-Con with new Hasbro toys with Knights of Ren. That's cool. If we didn't have other stories to talk about, we'd be spending time on that. We got a 60-second trailer for Fallen Order. It's already been pre-ordered. Who cares? We're going to play it. But the big one that dropped first was the Mandalorian trailer. And the second one, which we're going to talk about first, is the trilogy of movies that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss were going to do is no longer going to happen. Deadline was the first reported, and it kind of went off from there. Them and Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm, had separate statements pretty much saying the same thing, that they just realized that they've just got too much stuff on their plate right now with their Netflix deal, and that they're unable to continue on with this trilogy of movies that they're going to be coming. So initial thoughts from you.
I'm honestly, I'm a little bit shocked, but I'm not going to say I'm not 100% surprised. I mean, they're going to go where the money's going. And I think to your point, you called it kind of not too long ago with the fact that they may pull out, but they're going to leave their 2 cents. It was almost like a consultancy type thing. So I mean, they might not be calling it the consultancy, or like they consulted on the series and talked about it and then they left. They might just be like, okay, we're not going to do that. My concern is that this is a legitimate shelving of the project. Now, that's not to say that again, Lucasfilm's not going to go back and they're going to take some of the stuff that they worked with and spin it with a different actor. I also don't know if this is anything part and parcel to the decision that they had was due to Kevin Feige.
So, yes. I have many thoughts on this, and most of them are about business, the business end of things.
Right.
A lot of the palaver today on the internet, on Twitter, on Facebook, on a lot of the YouTube channels that I follow for entertainment news, they all said this is a terrible turn of events for Lucasfilm, for Kathleen Kennedy, and all I have to do is sit there and roll my eyes. I am done with this. They have changed course, and it's bad conversation that keeps going on. And from where I sit as a sports fan, if a quarterback isn't playing well, they put him on the bench. If a GM isn't getting his job done, he gets fired. It happens all the time. This happens all the time in movies too. Actors are replaced after the pilot or 2 weeks into filming, like they did in The Lord of the Rings. Like, things change all the time. And this idea that it's bad because Kathleen Kennedy has picked somebody, worked with them, tried to make everything work, and it doesn't work, and so she pulls the trigger without even thinking about it. That's my biggest gripe about this. If they can't get the story that they wanted, or they honestly don't have time, then why are we forcing it?
Yeah.
That's been my biggest thing about everything that's going on. Hey, Benioff and Weiss, I liked your stuff, and I like a lot of the other stuff that you've done. If you can't figure out how to make it work, why is it bad to walk away?
Well, and that's just it. I mean, you'll hear people think, like, oh, he was in charge of Wolverine, or they were in charge of, Wolverine Origins, which was terrible. But let's face it, if that's your crux point, look, they came in, they did Game of Thrones, they did a good job with Game of Thrones. The guys are going to be in demand. They just came off Game of Thrones. Obviously, they've got some clout behind them now. Obviously, they've made some improvements since back in the day. But that's just it. They didn't come out. This was not, we're firing them from Disney. This was not that. And that's what people need to understand. I think the people are upset primarily because we all want our Old Republic. And it's not to say that that's the movie trilogy that they were doing. It's just what most of us out there have presumed it to be given the Game of Thrones tenure. Right. That doesn't mean we're still not going to get it. But they came out and they were very eloquent about it. They were just like, this isn't a Disney fired us. This is that type of thing. This is with the current stuff that we've got on the plate, we literally can't serve it justice. And if we're going to do this, we want to do it justice. Right.
And I had some people today say that statement is just a blanket, like, like.
It could be.
It could be.
But it might not be.
But I'm the good at, if you're going to have it's not a joint statement, but both sides are saying the same thing. If that's what's actually coming out, then okay, cool. I'm gonna take you on your word. There's been nothing that any of them have done to make me believe that what they're saying isn't true. Now,
exactly.
It could come back in 6-8 months, and the story couldn't match, or that Dan and Dave wanted to go in a different direction than what Kathleen Kennedy or Lucasfilm decided they wanted to go in a different direction than what they had already set up in with Dan and Dave. Like, and all of that's okay. It is okay if something isn't going to work out to change, to get away from it, to try to make the best product possible. And if the best product possible isn't with the people you've hired, it's okay. And
well, and that statement's important too, because I mean, realistically, this is the one concern that Lucasfilm has and Disney has, is they have to make the best quality product right now that's possible. And that's Rise of Skywalker. That's post Rise of Skywalker, because they've got. Now, I'm going to go back onto this. They have lost fan base. They absolutely have lost some of the fan base. That being stated, I don't think they've lost the money from the fan base, because they're still going to go watch it, because even if it's a train wreck, they still want to see it. So that's their thing, you know. And realistically, Disney's got to put their best step forward. If the situation's not going to work out, they have got so much potential slated between Disney Plus content and everything else. Hey, look, take a step back. Slow it down a little bit. Let people do the quality work they meant to quality. If you got to go 2 years before you get a new movie, kids, let it go 2 years before you get a new movie.
Yeah. And
let it happen.
This is the thing that we wanted DC to do. Everybody was complaining about DC rushing and not really having it being rudderless, but having too many fingers in the pie or whatever, with what they did with Batman versus Superman and Justice League and all that stuff. And people asked them to take a step back, and they did. They took a step back, and they're gonna do Wonder Woman, and they did Joker, and they're gonna do the Batman, and they're taking a breath, and they're kind of getting a new take. They redid everybody from Warner Brothers from the top down to make it all work. I don't see that as a bad thing. I really don't see that as a bad thing. It proves to me that they care enough to make the product correct. Now, no one ever officially said they're doing Old Republic. No one has. We've all conjectured and thought, and it all made sense. But with that, it could have been something completely different. And I'm okay with it not being Old Republic, especially if you take some of the rumbling is that they want to move forward with storytelling, not stay within the confines of the 9 movies, of the 11 movies, and moving beyond that. So you tell Star Wars stories that are beyond the Skywalker saga. If you're going to do that, it's okay that you bring somebody in that maybe has a different take on it. I know what did they say? The next movie was scheduled for December of 2022, and then 2024, then 2026. I think that's what the next 3 were.
Yeah.
And those 3 were going to be the Benioff and Weiss movies. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, what fills the void now? Is this the Rian Johnson stuff? Is this the one-off that Kevin Feige's going to do? What do you think is going to fill this void of the next 3 movies?
I think they just I think realistically what happened is I think they just hot buttoned Rian Johnson's. He's been a little, all of a sudden he kind of started coming back out into the woodwork a little bit and being a little more
Knives Out is coming
about
out.
it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think they're going to. I think they're going to push forward. And I think part of it has to do with I think what's going to happen is I think once Rise of Skywalker comes out and we all see it, I think people are going to see how that translates back into The Last Jedi. I think they're going to finally see that tie into The Last Jedi, and maybe some of the conspiracy theorists and all the people are going to go, oh, we get it now.
Yeah.
And Rian Johnson's going to be sitting on the backside going, okay, it might not have come off the greatest the first time, but now you get it. And I think that's going to be his clout, because it's not like he does a bad movie. You know, people have to understand to a degree that they're still writing. They're still how it's edited, and they're still, so you could have a fantastic script and it can get lost in translation somehow just due to things like editing. So you got to give people the benefit of a doubt. Trust in the fact that the Disney Star Wars entities have great people behind it. Right. You have Filoni. You have all the other guys who are writing on this, and you know, they're not letting this sit. So yeah, I think it's going to open the door for Rian Johnson. I think because of the Kevin Feige thing, I think we're going to see the Kevin Feige one-off. And I mean, realistically, I think they're looking at it going, we're about to launch a premium network. We've got 1 series already coming out. We've got another series in development with Obi-Wan. We've got another slated with Cassian Andor. God forbid, they may actually step away from the large screen for a little bit, and you may see Benioff and Weiss come back, not doing a giant theatrical release, but you may see them come back in capacity to do something like what they did with Game of Thrones for HBO.
Right. And they, in their statement, they actually made a point of saying we're not closing the door about never doing a Star Wars thing again. Like Lord and Miller just pretty much Lord and Miller didn't like burn it to the ground, but they were like, okay, we're out. If you're gonna fire us, we're out. Dan and Dave were like, we want to do this. It's and George Lucas is the reason we make movies and Star Wars. But we just can't do it right now. And some people complain that they followed the money. They got $500 million to go to Netflix. I'm going to Netflix. I don't care what Disney's got. But I really see those 3 movies that are coming up. It would be very interesting if you did individual one-off stories with an overall like back plot. Not necessarily the Thanos backstory to all the movies that we just did with the MCU, but a general idea like that. You have some kind of connective tissue outside of it just being a Star Wars film, moving the story forward away from the Skywalkers. You bring the Force back into it, and then you do a heist film. You do a buddy travel movie. You do some kind of murder mystery, Murder on the Orient Express kind of thing, and do these kind of genre films that are connected to each other simply, and you can work your way forward away from what you already kind of have sitting. That's kind of what they've been talking about doing for a while now, and I really hope that that's what they do. I love the saga overall, and I'm super excited about the Mandalorian and the Cassian series and the Obi-Wan series. I love all that, but it's cool to go back and play in those little time slots. I'm ready for them to move it forward. And so I guess what I'm hoping is that they just do a new story and like do new stories. I guess that's, I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing though. The galaxy itself, as it sits right now, it's the time frames are ripe for picking. I mean, let's say you can move a story forward by going into the past, and I think that's to their point. We have 2 options. So we have the timeline moving forward, post Luke Skywalker and Rey. We have the timeline in the past. And with them retconning everything, that there's a whole lot of holes there that still need to be filled in that the retcon is left. So, you take something like, okay, well, they go, we want an Old Republic movie. Well, look, kids, you can have the Old Republic set in the time frame of the game. You can have the Old Republic set in the time frame of the original game. You can have the Old Republic set in the time before the Old Republic. I mean, there's a whole slew of legends that has been established that was moved aside. Some of those elements have been brought back into modern canon for the past. So they can completely do that, not have it be part of the Skywalker universe, and still kind of flesh out things that they're alluding to in the current saga. We can go forward. We can get into the Chiss Ascendancy. We can get into that whole thing. Hell, you know what? And at the extent of pissing off every Star Wars fan out there, except for a few of us who actually like the characters, you could bring in the Yazoo Vong. You could do things like that. Creatures that live outside the Force that are ugly, like orcs. Right. But you could still do plenty of things like that and still have room. So yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's the Coruscant, there's the Mafias, the Hutts, there's that entire arc. There's a ton of shit.
There's a ton of stuff out there. Just to pop, an idea that just pops in my head. What if Kevin Feige's doing Dr. Aphra? You do an Indiana Jones Dr. Aphra movie, standalone, outside of everything else, and she is the one going out and finding, Sith and Jedi relics like she does in the comic. It'd be an interesting story.
Becoming such a fan favorite, I would think. Honestly, I wouldn't hurt to see it as a series. Even if they did an animated series of it.
I would be cool if it was an animated series, but the girl that plays Mantis, she would be a really good Aphra.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. She would be a really good Afra. Just a weird thought off the top of my head. Okay, let's get into the Mandalorian trailer. We're not going to do what we did last week. Last week we did the top 5. Well, okay, the first time we did a shot-by-shot trailer reaction, and that didn't record. Are we still recording? We're still recording. But we ended up doing top 5 things from the Rise of Skywalker trailer. And I think this week, because a lot of the footage that we got is stuff that we've already seen. I think we just want to have a discussion about what we think is going to happen after what we saw in this trailer. The big thing for me, there's 2 big things that kind of in this trailer for me. One was the Werner Herzog voiceover at the beginning, and he said, "I'm sorry," or he talks about how is the world, not the galaxy, is the world better after the rebellion? And I'm sorry what happened to your world. So let's get into that first. Is he talking about Mandalore? Is he talking about?
Yeah, he says I'm sorry for what he goes into that whole conflict. Which, by the way, that whole Werner Herzog track on that one was way better. Yeah. And I mean, classic Werner Herzog. Just the guy's got a narrative about it that just makes it powerful. And yeah, I was more excited. That was probably I was more excited for that than I think I was actually for the last, or the Rise of Skywalker trailer. Actually, I think I was more excited for the Mandalorian. But he goes, has been different since the Revolution, and I'm sorry for what happened to your people. So I don't know if he means post thing, but I do. I think that's a direct reference. Now, it could be rebellion. We don't know. He might be referencing rebellion.
Right.
But I really do think it's dealing with the Empire's effect on what happened with Mandalore, because going back to Rebels, when we saw Bo-Katan kind of rising up and doing that whole thing, I think they're really they're probably going to flesh into that. At least I hope they would.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that idea process too, because Dave Filoni is directly involved in this, and Jon Favreau is super into the Mandalore culture and stuff like that. So if we're gonna, with everything that we've seen, we don't know what this story is. The story of the series is about. So I'm really happy about that. But knowing that the 2 of them are involved, the way they touched on Mandalore, both in Clone Wars and in Rebels, and everything that happened there, I really think that he's directly referencing what the Empire did to Mandalore and Boca Raton, Boca. I would love if that was the story, because they really haven't done that in a non-cartoon way, and so a lot of the fan base doesn't really understand that, including myself. I have never done a deep dive into the Mandalorian culture. Not that I'm opposed to it. I just haven't. I've been much more into the Jedi stuff and cool spaceships. So to do a deep dive into the Mandalorian culture in a show where you can do an extended character study on a specific person and tie it into that is such a great idea for me.
There's so much backstory to that too. I mean, not only do you have, the relations with the Mandalorians, you have the clan aspects to it. You have, Obi-Wan's relationship with Bo-Katan, and that family and everything else.
And Duchess Satine.
Duchess Satine. Yeah. So I mean, there's the entire. There's all that backstory. And I mean, okay, so now you're coming out with The Mandalorian. You've got an Obi-Wan series coming out. Things can kind of be interwoven. It can fill in some gaps. Yeah, man. I mean, they have a really, really good opportunity to kind of set the record straight outside of the cartoon canon.
Right.
Which is, I mean, still, canon universe, but outside of the cartoon canon, they have the opportunity to kind of start setting some of the records straight and being like, okay, what happened? We don't know when we're going to get the follow-up to Rebels with Sabine and everything. So there's still that whole period of that aftermath that we don't know about. And I'm really kind of hoping that this is going to give them the opportunity to delve into that in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super excited about what that story can do for the overall canon and expanding the universe of the overall canon. Just back to the conversation we were having about getting away from the Skywalker saga. If you go in, if you deep dive into the whole Mandalorian culture, that brings up a whole can of worms that could be so much fun to watch. The other thing that came out of this trailer was the little kid. Now, we heard rumors at one point in time that the MacGuffin for this series is going to be a small child. And we really haven't seen a whole lot with a child, but there has been a few segments, shots, things where we've been like, here's the mother and her child, and they really kind of put it right in the middle of the trailer. In this one, we get a little child reaching out for someone, and we have a woman in a red hood carrying a child with a Clone Wars battle droid. What do they call it? Are they B2?
They're the B2 attack droids. B2 battle droid.
In the background, and then they have a
the
droid.
The HB-1 droid gunship.
A gunship flying overhead. So all of that kind of makes us feel like, is this a flashback scene and the child is the Mandalorian? And this is where we get the Empire taking over Mandalore? Would that be kind of, I mean, like back to the conversation we were just having. Maybe there's a hint there that that's what that is? Maybe? Fingers crossed.
So they came in. And this is the thing that's going to make this cause speculation. I think this has kind of flown under the radar a little bit in terms of the news. Is the fact that they came out and said that there's going to be a canon-changing spoiler in the first episode.
Right.
So okay. So think about So you have that. You have obviously the Empire's effect on Mandalore. Now it could be Mandalore, could be Conquered Dawn. We don't know. It could be one of the other worlds. The Mandalorian culture believes in kind of a village to raise a child. So if he was kind of an orphan and they took him in and raised him as Mandalore, he would be considered Mandalorian, even if he wasn't of the planet. So you have that. You still have the Darksaber. I don't think we'll see it. We might get a reference.
I think we'll get a reference. Yeah.
I think we're going to get a reference, especially with Filoni's involved and that whole thing's still out there. Yeah, man. I honestly, the way it's shaping up, I really think that's going to be the backstory because if not him, something else. Because this takes place after Return of the Jedi. We have Clone Wars. So that happened in the past, like way in the past. So depending on his age, maybe not.
He could be...
Potentially.
He could be, 40s-ish, which is, fits Pedro Pascal's age right now. I mean, I think he's late 30s, early 40s, so it fits. Yeah. Everything fits in that kind of reference. I love that idea of having this story arc where you see the direct ramifications of what the Empire has affected individuals. It was one of the few things they actually got. Okay, that's not the right way. To one of the few things I wish they would have gone further into in Rogue One, and they've done it in the comic and the books and stuff like that. That Cassian was a separatist during the Clone Wars, and then became a rebel once he realized that he was fighting for the wrong side. So and having this idea of really showing the Empire for what the Empire is in a visual form. They've dealt with it in the books a bunch, and I don't like this comparison, but there's no other reference that I can actually bring up off the top of my head. But the Empire was Nazi Germany.
They were.
And they were very anti-alien, very scorched earth, will take the resources and damn whoever's left. And they tortured and killed groups of people just because they wouldn't. They freaking blew up Alderaan. I was like, just to kind of strike fear into people. So seeing that and having them actually address that in a live action show that is going to bring out people's. How many people walk around in stormtrooper outfit and Imperial garb? It's like no, you're doing the wrong thing. I'm totally a rebel. I'm getting a license plate that says rebel for life. So that's kind of so that's just. Was there any other story points within the trailer that you wanted to bring up other than like there's some like detail stuff that I wanted to bring up, but is there like a story point thing that you thought should be brought up?
Yeah, not so much in the trailer. I mean, the trailer was still a little ambiguous. I really want to get into Cara Dune's backstory because we're starting to see.
Yes.
So when you think about it, there's this new classification. So we saw it in Rogue One, and I think to a degree this is going to have a little bit of that Rogue One vibe to it. We saw, Baze Malbus. He was a essentially a Resistance heavy gunner.
Yeah.
We're going to see Cara Dune, who's kind of in that same kind of a Baze Malbus type of character. Are we going to see potentially Cassian Andor in the flashbacks because it would put him in the time frame?
Right.
Are we going to see stuff like that? So again, canon changing thing sets it up for the Cassian Andor series potentially. I don't know. I could speculate, but I think we're going to see some subtle nuances to it that we don't normally see. I think we're going to see the pirates. I think we're probably going to see, the Weequay pirates potentially come into play here, especially with his intergalactic dealings.
Right.
The other big takeaway for me was the fact that we're going to see Death Troopers, we're going to see the Empire's influence, and can I give it up for Giancarlo Esposito, who happens to be probably one of my favorite actors out there.
Yeah.
And the fact that I got to see him in a TIE fighter.
Right. Cool. Right. And the Rocketeer moment with the Mandalorian.
Where he fires the jetpack, so he gets his jetpack. He gets his jetpack.
There was a couple details in there. I think Giancarlo is going to be the overall bad guy of the series. I think Werner Herzog is going to hire the Mandalorian to do a bounty, and then but Giancarlo is going to be he's Moff. Moth. I cannot remember. Gideon. Moff Gideon. And he's just trying to control the small moon because he's been left by the Empire because they've all left. I like too that the idea of the Chuck Wendig series that we spent so much time talking about in Aftermath, their group, they actually go out and they're trying to track down ex-Imperials, kind of the Nazi hunters of bringing back up that idea. It'd be cool if the Mandalorian is kind of that same kind of thing, but he just works for whoever's got the highest, bounty and stuff like that. There was some detailed stuff that I found really interesting. When they open the door and there's all the stormtroopers in the one office, and they all kind of turn around. Janice and I were talking about it. I love, if you really look at it, okay, their armor is dirty. It makes sense. It's 5 to 8 years after the Battle of Endor and the Empire's fallen. So their armor is dirty and stuff like that. Okay, I can give you that, but it's misfitting, and that was my biggest thing that I caught my eye. Is that it's like the armor is mismatched to fit on whoever is guarding whoever is in this room. The helmets are too big, the shoulder pads are too big, everybody that's actually in the armor itself is too small, a little short to be a stormtrooper, don't you think? So I like that detail was really cool. The space battles, I swear to God, I thought this whole thing was going to be in a desert planet, Tatooine kind of style thing. The cantina scene with all the aliens, it was super, super cool. And the
Bill Burr popping out with his gun over his shoulder.
Yeah. The fight with the Bosk. Trandoshans, thank you. That fight that we saw a picture of from Entertainment Weekly, and everybody thought it was action figures. That shot, that like little exchange is really cool, and the rifle is a shock weapon, as a taser. It was like that was really cool. The Ugnaught. I want to talk about the Ugnaught that's with the Mandalorian on the Razor Crest. Now we get a shot with all of the prisoners in carbonite freeze, and then they're taking them off the ship, and there's an Ugnaught with them. I'm gonna say this now. I'm not the first to say it, but I kind of thought it when I first saw it. That's going to be Nick Nolte.
Looks exactly like him.
everybody said Nick Nolte was doing a voiceover piece. It would make sense that a Ugnaught who worked in Bespin, who was probably in the room when they carbonite froze Han, now, his skills are being sold to a bounty hunter who can carbonite freeze people so they don't run away. You don't have to feed them. You can either easily transported. Yeah. So I think that's going to be his like sidekick buddy until he gets to a point where he's with Cara Dune and everybody else. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if they have like a Magnificent Seven where they have to like go in and save a village or something like that.
It's totally a Kurosawa. It's gonna be a Kurosawa film. I mean, we've got our samurai western.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Star Wars is based off of, right? Loosely based off. You take Flash Gordon serials and Kurosawa, and you mix them together and put in spaceships. I mean, that's what Star Wars is.
World War II movie, and that's it. Yeah.
And Filoni has talked about how much that all of that's been an influence on him. So has Favre. So I make all of that kind of sense. Is there anything else in this trailer that you were like, dude, that's cool? Like just like a visual shot, like a individual shot that you're like, dude, that's cool.
No. I think we already recapped all my cool scenes that I think I had. I'm super into Werner Herzog's character. I do think the Ugnaughts Nick Nolte, because even if they're doing him CGI, I don't know if they're actually going to do. I assume they're going to do part CGI, part animatronic, if they have to. But there are some moments when they see his face, and I'm sure it's Nick Nolte just because the facial expressions look like Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a couple. There's a couple of shots that we saw before that are, lone gunman walking in from the prairie by himself. There was a couple of those. You talked about it earlier. I'm going to bring it up again. I have found, for me, I am more excited about The Rise of Skywalker than I am The Mandalorian. Not that I'm not excited about The Mandalorian, but I just feel a draw to The Rise of Skywalker more, and I think I'm one of the few that actually feels that right now.
I'm excited for Rise of Skywalker. I'm just a little burned out at this point on all the pre-stuff for Rise of Skywalker. I think at this point, they're still speculating. We're going to speculate. I mean, that's just going to happen. But I think we see what we're going to see, and I think at this point, I've kind of gotten to that level where I almost want to be on moratorium a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to see it in its glory. I spoiled myself a little bit with some of the leak stuff that came out and everything else. And you know what? Cool. But I really kind of want to enjoy The Mandalorian for what it is, because that's pretty much that prime timeline that, we grew up with, Right. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. That's a really unique time period that to deal with, So I think I'm really, really motivated for The Mandalorian, only because I love Mandalorian culture and history. I love the backstory. I'm not going to go as far as to say I'm obsessed with the Mandos, but they're a very, very interesting. They're a very, very interesting faction that I love. I love their back history. I love their story. I want to see that fleshed out. So I'm excited for that. And I think that's going to tide me over with the video game just up until Rise of Skywalker, where I can, be a 5-year-old in the theater, with you as we're sitting there and just be like, because that's going to happen. So yeah, I would say I'm probably about on even keel as far as excitement. I'm ready to get the ball rolling. I need some content, and I need it now.
Yeah, I felt today that I'm more excited about Rise of Skywalker. Now, I have not done the deep dive into all the online leak stuff. I'm pretty good about staying away from that kind of stuff. I am going to listen to Resistance Reborn. It comes out on the 5th. I think it's the 5th. It's already in my queue pre-ordered it with my Audible, and so I'm definitely excited about that, especially after the review I heard today about how it's going to show us in that book. It's going to tell us how they rebuild the Order, how they rebuild the Resistance and stuff, which is, I think, backstory, which is going to be really important. That they will only do an exposition or a line in the crawl kind of thing. But I'm definitely excited about both of these. Just finding that I'm a little bit more excited about Rise of Skywalker. So, that's fine.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. We didn't put it on the discussion list, but we did talk about it. Wedge.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Wedge for 2 seconds. Here's my thought. Here's my thought process. He is on the cover of the Resistance Reborn. It makes sense that you would go back and get an old pilot and help rebuild the Resistance. That is really easy to do in book form, and so it makes complete sense to throw him in the book. Dennis Lawson himself has been more embracing of the Star Wars fandom over the last few years. He was at Celebration and that kind of stuff. Puppies. But what I'm struggling with right now is, as much as it makes sense for the overall story of the Skywalker saga and having him come back, I don't want it. I feel like it would be such a small part of a big movie that it's almost cheapens him returning. I almost wanted him to come back in Last Jedi. I actually wanted Wedge back more than Lando in Last Jedi. That's just me. But that's where I'm at. I'm kind of just struggling with the idea of a character of that importance in the saga, especially in the books, and having him be in it for 2 seconds kind of seems like it's cheap to me.
Yeah, and there's that whole. I mean, for people who haven't read, the Aftermath books and everything, he is kind of an integral part of those books. Wedge has he's a much larger character.
He snaps surrogate dad,
right,
in that series, and he's in the Poe Dameron comic, and he's in what was the other book that I just listened to? That's anyways. Yes, he's in the story. He's an integral part in the story. So
yeah, I've got my own. I honestly don't want him to have I want him to appear in Rise of Skywalker, but I don't want him to be this giant, huge role. I want him to come out, 5 minutes of screen time, pull a Han and be like, Yahoo, you're all clear, kid. And here he is in his old busted ass X-Wing, coming in and just being like, I'm Wedge. I don't need exactly the most, the best thing on the planet. I just nuked half your guys. I really want that. And I mean, it might be childish. It might be, the little kid in me.
No.
Just that 5 minutes. He's just like,
cool.
Nobody's expecting it. They're like, oh, sorry, Wedge is not appearing in this movie. But wait. And he's just like, out of nowhere, last in, makes everybody go, yeah, jump up. That's how I want it. That's how I want it to happen. And he goes back off and is like, peace out, kid.
My concern, because my brain is working this way right now with this whole story arc, is my concern is Leia. He goes off with Leia on the side mission, and that whole side mission, everybody's decimated, and so they kill him off screen like they did Akbar. I have no problem with them with the way they dealt with Akbar and killing off Akbar. I just, with Wedge specifically, and he's not my favorite character in the whole series, but he's such an important part that I just don't want him to come back. They've done the kill off screen. I don't want him to be like the cavalry coming in kind of thing. However, if he is, if Snap and Black Squadron, we're gonna figure out the name of this squadron. Go off to find help, and they bring Wedge back, and then Wedge is part of the process there. That would be fine with me.
Yeah,
I just don't want him to go off with Leia and get killed off screen or get shot down by some random TIE fighter. He's too good of a pilot, even at his advanced age, to have that. I don't want him to, do the sacrifice play. I just want him to come in and be part of Black Squadron or Phoenix Squadron. That would be really cool if they brought Phoenix Squadron in, or whatever else, and have him be a badass and be part of the training of the new pilots and do an 80s training montage with
Yeah, no chump death.
Right. That's what I'm scared.
Yeah, you gotta give Wedge the reverence he deserves. I mean, leader of Rogue Squadron, he's got a pedigree and a history that rivals, at least from the flight side of things, that of Luke and everyone else. So I mean, no chump death. Don't. But I do agree. I do feel like he's been off somewhere, kind of off on his own, working for the Resistance or something. And to your point, I think it'd be cool too. As much as I want my swoop in surprise, I think it's still going to be a surprise for a lot of people. Him being brought back into the whole thing, like, okay, he's a little reluctant, but he's back doing it again because he knows it's what he has to do. So yeah, I agree.
I will only accept his death as he does a Russell K from Independence Day death.
Okay, that's fair.
He's the pilot. Doing the weeding the fields and stuff like that. He's the old drunk who comes back in and does the sacrifice play to kill the aliens. That's the only acceptable.
Where's Jack Porkins when we need him? Oh wait, he's still blown up. Sorry. Porkins comes back as a Force ghost.
And we've gone off the rails. All right, that's this week's show, folks. Let us know what you thought. Tell us what you thought of the Mandalorian trailer, and are you on the same kind of idea that there's going to be flashbacks and that kind of stuff? Are you looking forward to seeing Wedge? And just let us know. Do you have Disney Plus already or not? Let us know in the comments. Like this video. Help us out by subscribing to the channel. Share with your friends. That's important too. We're working on a Patreon. It's a Star Wars goal. And we're also on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All that information is in the description down below. And until next time, I'm one with the Force.
And the Fourth is with us. Take care.